Creative Mornings Virginia Beach. I think this is our number 6. 4, 6?
I think it's more than that.
6?
This is 7.
I don't know.
We're in June because we started in January, right?
Nice. I think we started in December. I think we're 7.
Or November.
Anyway, we're appreciative for you all to come out here and spend your morning with us. If you haven't already grabbed some coffee, please grab some coffee. Thank you to Robert with Brand Fuel, our partner here, who provided the beautiful mugs.
And you can take them home.
Take your mug home with you today. Use it in good health, and then bring it back next month. So we'll start to get rid of all the disposables and just rely on our reusable, environmentally friendly cups. Okay? All right. Our theme today is pattern, and we have had such a great time, our host committee, looking at the themes every month and picking a local creative entrepreneur to feature. So we're very excited to have Paige Welch with us today to explore pattern and what that means to her in her life. We want you to come, bring a friend. So we have had great fortune to have, I think, over 120 people come to these events so far. But each month we're seeing new faces, and we want you to keep inviting people and bringing new people along. This is meant to grow. And then here's our team. So myself, Kate Pittman, Robert Bagash, wave there in the back, Tessa Hall at the garage, Sunny Peoples, who's our wonderful creative and also one of our Arts and Communities Commissioners, Rachel, our resident photographer here for us and also talented ceramicist, Albert, who's running the AV, thank you Albert, Val, who's going to be our guest blogger each month, thank you, and then Cassie, hello, thank you for being here. So thanks for all of your volunteer effort, it really makes a difference, we appreciate you. All right, ego. All right, as a recap, there's 238 chapters in cities all across the globe and 69 different countries. So we're really excited that this is one of only 2 that exist in the state of Virginia. We want to keep growing it. So what that means in total is that there's over 27,000 people a month participating in Creative Mornings globally. So don't forget, you can go online and find all those talks in all the different countries and explore virtually. And then today we did actually pass out, we're bringing you to church. Got your program. If you would like to join us in the Creative Manifesto, we're going to have Rachel read that. All right, let's do it. All right, together.
Everyone is creative. A creative life requires bravery and action, honesty and hard work. We are here to support you, celebrate you, and encourage you to make the things you love. We believe in the power of community. We believe in giving a damn. We believe in face-to-face connections and learning from each other and high-five and high-five. We bring together people who are driven by passion and purpose, confident that we will inspire one another and inspire change in neighborhoods and cities around the world. Everyone is welcome.
Beautiful job, beautiful job. Where's on? Okay. All right, at this time we're going to have Sunny come up and invite Paige, our speaker. We're good. It's going to come back on. Very good.
And
It's
just
hard to
hold it up like this.
Yeah.
We've been experimenting, so
I'll try to remember.
we'll see.
If I don't work, I'll get it.
Good morning, Virginia Beach.
Good.
It is the first Friday of summer. And I get the great opportunity to introduce our guest speaker. I'm not going to use the microphone.
It picks up on the audio.
Okay. Paige Welch is an artist, culinary, and artist. We're going to start from scratch. Paige Welch is a culinary and visual artist, currently residing here in Virginia Beach. Born and raised here. In her bio, she tells us she is 32 years of age and has been actively making art for more than 15 years. Paige started her business in high school and selling hand-painted apparel. She specializes in freehand drawings and has a passion for making intricate work. Pen, ink, and acrylic paints are her mediums of choice. Besides making visual art, she's a chef, owner, and operator of Empowered Plant Cakes. She enjoys being in the kitchen, cooking up plant-based edible delights. I remember her mandala-style art and had the pleasure of knowing her through energy medicine and the healing arts community. There is so much to tell you about this pattern maker, but I'll let her tell you. Please welcome to the floor, Paige Welch.
All the things.
Oh, okay. Sweet. I'll probably be bad at Can I put this on here or does that? Well, thank you guys for having me. So my name is Paige Welch, as they said. And so I own a cake company that specializes in vegan and gluten-free cakes. The unique thing about them is that they are not baked at all. They're blended in a blender and then they're frozen to set. So we've been in business for about 6 years, but as I walked up to this today, Tessa said to me, she was like, wow, you're just blowing up your life lately. And so I've just been going through a massive change the last year and a half, but I'm gonna go back into my story and kind of tell you how I got there, how I started Empowered Plant Cakes, and so we'll go from there. So as I mentioned, I was born and raised here in Virginia Beach. I went to Catholic school my whole life, and this is important to my story because I was just like a natural rebel. My mom like shoved going down to church in my throat, like I would get grounded if I didn't go to church, and I went to Catholic school, and it was very like suffocating for me. And so in high school, I turned to art a lot. So like one of my first passions was I carried a sketchbook with me everywhere. And I would just doodle these little like intricate patterns and things like that, and that's kind of what got me through. I always hated school, but I love to do artwork. And honestly, doing the artwork would help me pay attention better in class. I was on ADD medicine and all different types of stuff, but when I would draw, I was able to focus in on what I was listening to. And so I was just kind of the kid that was known for having her sketchbook with her. Where do I want to go with that? So when I was 16, my sister was getting married, and I was with my mom, and we went to Michael's, and I had been doing art prior to that, but I had asked my mom if I could buy some of this fabric paint. I was like, I have this idea, I want to paint a t-shirt. My mom was like, that kind of sounds tacky, but sure, we'll get you the paint or whatever. So I painted my first t-shirt, which you can see is the green one right there. I wore that thing like 1,000 times and I've cleaned it a whole bunch. It's also like at this point 16 years old. But that was my first t-shirt and I was so proud. I loved it so much. And so I wore it to school, and kids around me at my school, they started purchasing t-shirts, and then my mom's friends, and it turned into a business. So I started my first business. It's called Love Paige Art when I was 16. So I literally sold thousands of those shirts. I would do art shows around town, like, the Boardwalk Art Show and things like that. And that was my first kind of passion, and I loved it. Like, I spent my whole spring break, I would just be in my room, my floor was like splattered with paint, and I would just be in there painting for like 8-10 hours straight. I'm not joking. My back would like hurt so bad from painting, but I just loved it. So that was kind of my life. And then when I was, I had been in therapy before that. I was always just kind of like an angry child, to be honest. I think maybe having to do with a lot of the religious stuff. Like, my parents put me in therapy when I was 13. I started taking antidepressants. I was on ADD medicine, and then I started drinking in high school. And so the combination of like drinking with antidepressants, and that was when Four Loko was a thing too, which is just a terrible combo. So I was out at a Lil Wayne concert when I was 17, and I got arrested at the concert. I completely blacked out, and I woke up in juvie, and I'm not joking, I had 4 felony charges and 4 misdemeanors, and so I woke up in juvie, and I was like, wait, where the hell am I? And the girls were like, what are you in here for? And I was like, I don't know, I was just like drunk in public or something. And so I woke up the next morning and they read me all my charges, and I was like, I don't even know what assault is. I mean, I got so drunk that I apparently like hit a cop. So it was kind of crazy. So that was like the beginning of a low point in my life. I was in juvie for a few days, and then honestly, I was just a little bit privileged where my parents got me an attorney, and I got out, and I was on house arrest for 3 months, my senior year of high school. So I went to Catholic high school. In my senior year, I spent with a house arrest bracelet on, and my parole or whatever probation officer would have to come to my school, drug test me, and that type of thing. And so I also, that's when the decline of my business started to happen, because I wasn't allowed to leave my house, which besides to go to school, and I was allowed to do 1 art show, but that was kind of like how I sold my stuff. And so I kind of like hit a dark period in my life, and my story is a little crazy at first, but it calms down. So, when I was on house arrest, I got really into, like, honestly doing, like, drugs and acid and things that they couldn't drug test you for. And so I think for me, it was just, like, exploring, like, I like that type of stuff with the stuff I was drawing. Like, these are my high school drawings over here on the left side. If you go in close, they're all kind of just, like, intricate patterns and details. And so I just kind of, like, dove into that and went off the deep end. But I did manage to get into college. And my parents were so happy and excited about that. Except for when I went to college, I went down to Florida, and 2 weeks later, I got kicked out. For smoking weed in my dorm room. And so my parents were just like super disappointed. They had to come and pick me up, and I had to come back to Virginia Beach. And so from here, I was just kind of in this weird like lull period of my life. And honestly, I was like abusing drugs and alcohol. And so about a year later, I ended up, I was taking drugs and I overdosed. And so I almost died. This guy found me in the middle of the night, and I was like blue, and I only had 2 heartbeats per minute left. Like, it was pretty crazy. And I got sent to the hospital, and the guy who called like went to jail, and because he had a warrant out for his arrest. And my parents had just kind of had it with me. So when I was in the hospital recovering, my mom had told me like, hey, like if you don't go to rehab, we are we're not going to support you. We're not going to pay for you to go back to college and things like that, because that was a goal of mine. So that was kind of like my, I guess, bottom moment where I got sent to a 30-day rehab in Williamsburg. And so I went there for 30 days, and I was like so ready to get out. And I was like, hell yes, I did this. Let's get out of here. And they were like, no, we think you need more treatment. So I got sent down to another treatment center down in Florida, which was more like a trauma center where we did like therapy twice a day, but it was really healing, and that's when I began to learn a lot about myself. And I would say that was like the first time I learned to I learned a lot of things about how to become like mentally more strong and like my mindset and things like that. And I was able to get off of antidepressants coming out of that treatment center, so that was also like a cool experience for me. So I stayed in that center for 5 months, and then I got out and I stayed living in Florida, and I was sober, doing my thing, working in a restaurant, and I met this guy at the restaurant. He was also in recovery. I'm 20 years old at the time, or I'm 18 or 19 when I met him, somewhere around there. And so I ended up like dating him. I just thought he was hot. He was like a total wreck. He was older than me, and I get pregnant at 20, and so I had to like call my parents and be like, hey, guys, I'm pregnant. I was super scared to tell them because I've just kind of been like a fuck up at this point. So I ended up, choosing to keep Wesley, my son. He's 10 now. So when I was pregnant, I decided that like I can't live down in Florida and raise this baby, so I moved back up to Virginia to be close to my family. So the guy Rob and I, we ended up moving back up here and lived off of Shore Drive somewhere in an apartment. And then I had Wesley. So I had Wesley when I was 21, my son. And so this was like a really powerful phase for me because being pregnant like really helped me. Like I thought it was like maybe an alcoholic or drug addict and I stayed sober, but like what it really was, like I just needed responsibility and something bigger than myself to care for. And so having my son like really gave me the power and inspiration to do that. And so I kind of went from the deep end of like not taking care of myself at all to getting pregnant, and I became like really I was just like in love with having a baby, I think, and like the idea of this. And I became like obsessed with health and wellness and like how I treat my body and what I put on my skin and what I put in my body. And then after Wesley was born, I started doing things like I met Sunny earlier. We did Reiki together and energy healing, and I got into all things health and wellness. I was working, so after Wesley was born, I started working at this grocery distributor out in Chesapeake. My uncle had gotten me the job. It was just like kind of through a connect, and I was doing that. And that's when my mom was, starting to talk about opening up the Green Cat, which is a juice bar down at the oceanfront. And so my mom's passion for a while had been my mom kind of like moved from passion to passion, and luckily when I went through rehab and all of this stuff, my mom kind of went from being super hardcore Catholic to just like, I believe in love, and I was like, thank God, like, I just like needed this change of pace. So my mom had kind of calmed down a lot too. And me having Wesley brought us closer as well. And so my mom was considering opening up the Green Cat, but she wanted it to be like a market, kind of her passion is the retail side of things. But my little sister was like, hey, like the way things are going, like you really just can't sell. I mean, it's hard to sell just merchandise and things like that. Like food is a way that people come, and go there every day. And so that's how I got involved, was with the food side of things, because that was like my passion at the time. I had been eating a lot of healthy food and juicing and doing things like that. So when Wesley was a baby, the Green Cat started to become crafted, and I was coming up with the menu. I was just like obsessed with all things food, and I would feed Wesley kind of the stuff that we were planning on, adding to the menu at the Green Cat. And, I breastfed him for a long time, and I was just passionate about kind of what kids eat, because kids in the United States are raised on like rice cereal and all these things that are super bland. And I was like, I'm not doing that with him. Like I fed him avocados and garlic and herbs and like all this stuff that they say not to, but I just wanted him to have a diverse palate, and that did work. So for his first birthday, since I was on this whole little kick, I wanted to make him a healthy cake. And so that's when I got the first idea for, the cakes that I do make now, which was a no-bake cheesecake. They're not a big thing here, but in Australia, they are actually a big thing. So it's not like I invented this, it's been around, but the recipes for empowered plant cakes are all of my own. So basically what it is, it's like a cake with nuts and seeds in the crust, and the filling is made with cashews, and then it's sweetened with dates, maple syrup, or agave, and you could add fruit. I think I did like a blueberry something cake for him. And then Sunny, actually, you paid me to like make a cake for you. I didn't really know I was doing this. And so that was how I made my first cake. And then Green Cat opened in 2015. And so I had Wesley in 2013, so 2 years after that. And so opening Green Cat was a great experience. I was like super passionate about it. I was only like 23, 24 when it opened, and I was a little bit of a workaholic. Like I was just in that, I'm young, I'm in that momentum, like, you gotta work hard and do all this stuff and be there all the time, and I was just like burning myself out. And honestly, I was a really bad leader. Like I didn't know how to manage people at all. I was like an asshole. And so I did that for 2 years, and basically my mom fired me. Which like really, and I can laugh about it now, but I was like so devastated and heartbroken, like, because I love that business so much, and I literally felt like I put everything I had into that. And so that was like, it makes me cry now. So that was like a really low moment for me. So I was kind of like in this position where I'm like, wow, like I don't have this anymore. Like, what am I going to do? And so I was like, I could go back to my job out in Chesapeake, which I didn't like. But at the time, like Wesley had just started kindergarten, so whatever time frame that was, and I was kind of looking at the silver lining, like, okay, I don't have to pay for daycare anymore. Like I'm losing that expense. And so I'm in a better predicament than I was like a year ago, and I'm never going to be really happy unless I do this for myself. I never ended up going back to college, and all of my strengths are like, creative, and I'm like, I like to draw, I like to make food. I'm like, I can't really go get a job doing that for somebody else. So I was like, I'm just gonna like bet on myself and try and do this. And within 30 days, I had gotten a business license and started my own business, because I just like, I had to hustle, I had to make money, I had to pay my bills. And so I was like, what kind of business can I start that I don't need a lot of overhead for? And so that's kind of how Empowered Plant Cakes came to be. And the word empowered was kind of like, this was me trying to like empower myself to do this. And so I started Empowered Plant Cakes. I went and I got my home kitchen inspected. I lived in like a condo on the 3rd floor or something, so it wasn't fun lugging all these ingredients up there. But basically to start it, I bought like a $1,000 freezer and some cake pans, and then I just like made an Instagram and started it from there. And so my first customer that I my goal was, I was gonna do some like food catering too. And I did one catering job, and the chick, like, I messed it up, and, you know, that was another low moment. She didn't like it, so I was like, all right, I gotta pivot. This isn't working. I'm just gonna focus on only doing the cakes because I know I can do this really well. And so I got my home kitchen inspected, and I was at Civil Libations one night, and they have a vegan menu, and so I just, like, asked the owner while I was there. I was like, hey, like, my name's Paige. I'm starting this company. I'm making these cakes. That's a great option that's vegan. We deliver it frozen, and you can thaw it out. I'm like, can I drop you by some samples? And so she said yes, and I dropped her by some samples, and that was like my first wholesale account. And around that time too, many of you guys might know her, Megan, she owns Crunchy Hydration right now. But before she owned Crunchy Hydration, she owned a juice company. And I had met her while I was doing Green Cat at a networking event. And Megan had like heard through a friend of a friend that like I was starting this business and I may need a space to work out of. So Megan had contacted me and was like, hey, like I'm renting space from Leaping Lizard up on Shore Drive. Why don't you see if you can rent space here too? Like come and I'll set up a meeting with Bill with you. So I set up, you know, I went through and I did the meeting, but I was kind of like ridden by fear a little bit at that point because the rent wasn't high, but I was just nervous about paying rent. So I actually said no, and I decided not to do that. But I think when something's like meant to be, it kind of just happens because a couple months later, I decided to re-have that conversation with Bill and asked if I could move in. So basically I got fired in September, had my business started at October 23rd, so going, and then I moved into Leaping Lizard like January 5th, you know, so a few months later. And that was a good thing. It was a smart move because I was able to pay for my rent just by selling the cakes through them. They had a little bakery case on the side, and so every weekend I would just like fill up the bakery case, and they would have lots of customers go through there. So it was really great because I got to sit there and sample all the cakes and talk about them. And then once I got that going, I was like trying to get into farmers markets. Another person I reached out to was Lori, which some of you may know. She runs Old Beach. She tried to just not answer my phone calls and deny me, but I was like persistent. I was like, I need a spot in this market. So anyways, I ended up getting into Old Beach, East Beach, and so the bread and butter of our business was working on a Leaping Lizard. I was trying to get wholesale clients, and then we were doing farmers markets. And I was kind of doing everything myself. That's how we got it going. And so as it started growing, you know, right now we're in, it's hard to tell you how many locations we're in right now, but somewhere over like 100, 150 right now. We're out throughout the state of Virginia. So we've grown it into that. So I rented space from Leaping Lizard for 2 years. There's pros and cons. I mean, I shared it with our bakery, so it was not like ideal, and it was kind of messy, and but basically we ended up running out of space. I had ended up having a meeting with Taste Unlimited and then with Neighborhood Harvest, and those were bigger wholesale clients for us. And so I had to like figure out something because I didn't have enough space to do that out of Leaping Lizard. And so that's when I found my space right now we're off of Witchduck Road. So I'd also met Gene, my husband. He walked in the back now. But so we had started dating like right after I started Empowered Plant Cakes or something like that, but we were kind of rocky on and off, you know. But he has his own business too, and so I had been looking for warehouses around 1,000 square feet, but I was having a hard time finding them. And so his first office, they had it was like in a little office park kind of near Witchduck Road, and some of them had warehouses in the back. So I actually like took over not his old location, but in the same area. And that's where we are right now. It's a 14,000 square foot warehouse, and it just has an office out in the front, and then a little front room, and then our warehouse in the back. And then eventually I started hiring people. I went to go hire my first employee. It was actually right before COVID. I was kind of debating on hiring somebody to help me make the cakes, and this chick had like reached out to me on Facebook saying that she had came to, you know, Virginia Beach. She's moving here and she had the cakes and she was wondering if I was hiring. And so I had an interview with her, and I asked her if she was interviewing anywhere else, and she was like, I have an interview with the Green Cat after this. And I was like, oh great, that's my mom. So we ended up both hiring her, and friend, she just got to choose which one she wanted to work for, and so she ended up choosing Empowered Plant Cakes, and Katie's been with me now for 5 years, or 4 or 5 years now, something like that, and she's been like my right hand. Like, I mean, I love her, she's awesome. And so we kind of grew into that together, but ironically, she was supposed to start March 17th, 2020 or something like that, so right in the middle of COVID. So we kind of held off for like a couple of weeks, and then I brought her on. And we were still going hard through COVID. I mean, I had to work harder than before because we were doing like drive-through markets and just trying to keep it going and stuff like that. And so a couple years later, we moved into the warehouse, and that's kind of what we're doing now, except for lately. So last year we went into 5 years in business, and I kind of just, that was like a big moment for me because before that I always felt like a new business. So I was like, I'm just trying to figure this thing out, like we're brand new. But going into 5 years, for some reason, like that really hit me, and I started analyzing what I'm doing. And I was like, wow, like I've been doing this for a while now. Like, am I happy with this? Am I where I thought it was going to be? And just kind of started analyzing everything, and also trying to give myself more space because prior to that I had no work-life balance. Like all I did was I worked and I hung out with my kid, but I just didn't have a very balanced life. And so getting married, I've been married for 2 years now, so like that kind of was like a big change for me too, and moving in and all that type of stuff. And so like just trying to focus more the last 2 years on like having a balanced type of life. And so last year it kind of like brought me into all of these questions where I started analyzing what I'm doing and realizing that like I am super frustrated because the last 3 years of my business, I've only worked on the business side of things. Like I haven't made a cake in 3, almost 4 years now. Katie does all of that really well, which is awesome. I just thought that I needed to grow the business. I needed to work on the business side of things, and that's all I've been doing. And so it took me like a year of exploration to realize that like, hey, I'm feeling frustrated because all I do is sit at a desk and deal with wholesale customers and bullshit, and nothing that I liked about like the beginning, the business in the first place. Like it kind of like, I don't do any of that anymore. So the last year I've just been trying to like figure out how I can implement more creativity back into my job. And that's when I also started, like I hadn't done art in like 10 years. And then last year, I just like kind of went through this whole phase where I was like, I need to do something. So I started doing paintings, and I have some drawings again too. So I've kind of like taken that back up. And before I had never painted, I mainly just did like really intricate pen and ink drawings. Most of them are black and white, and they're mandalas, like the ones up there. So I started getting back into art, and I actually have a display down at Taste at the oceanfront right now that has 8 pieces. They're a little bit bigger than that down there. And I'm just trying to then like tap into my creativity and explore a little bit. And I've been trying to do that with my business. So we started looking into storefront locations earlier this year because I was like, maybe I don't want to grow in a wholesale route. Like the goal for me was always to be making these flavors and making them in large batches and distributing them out. But I'm like realizing, wow, this doesn't really bring me happiness at the end. Like the job that it entails is like kind of crazy, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm the right person for this. So I was like, maybe I want to do a storefront and kind of bring back some of the stuff that I loved about like Leaping Lizard and doing all the flavors and the creativity. But then I started looking at storefront locations and the price of rent just for what I wanted to move our wholesale and our new retail all into one. But it just didn't really make sense when I was looking at like the space that we would need and the numbers. I'm like, that doesn't seem like a good fit either. And honestly, like this phase of my life has been like probably the hardest thing I've ever gone through. Because this is like my baby, and like I want to feel differently about it, and I don't. So like I want to talk about it because the last year, like I mean, I've like cried so much just trying to like figure out what I want to do, because I'm like, wow, like I want to feel good about this, and I like don't. And so I've been like trying to fight with myself, and I like look up stuff online, and they're like, well, if you don't like your job, you should leave it. I'm like, this is I care about the product. I just like don't, I'm feeling frustrated. And so I'm just kind of like in this phase of my life where I've been dealing with this for a year and a half and just trying to like understand why I'm so frustrated and maybe feeling like I'm not on the right path or something. And so this, a couple weeks ago, I announced that I'm actually putting my business on hold or on pause. And I'm going to step back for a couple months. I'm going month to month on my lease because I just personally need to take the time and figure out kind of what brings me joy in life, because I think that life is short and we kind of take ourselves too seriously in a way. And I don't want to spend the next years of my life doing something that I don't feel 100% on. And if I'm gonna lead this company, I need to feel good about what I'm doing. And so that's where I'm at right now. And it feels it's super scary, but it feels also good. And when people don't know you and they try and make small talk with you, the only thing they ask you about is your business. How's business going? And it's kind of stuck for the last year and a half, and people ask you about your business and you're just it's going great. I'm losing my mind. But, so honestly, doing this and being real and genuine about how I felt has felt really good, and it feels good to just be able to express how I feel and not have to try and put on a fake face and be I've got this all figured out, because I don't. And so I'm hopeful that as I've released things, certain opportunities have came up where I may actually end up partnering with my mom, which sounds crazy, but we've come a long way. Because she needs help with, reviewing the menu at Green Cat, and so we may end up partnering together. Empowered Plant Cakes will come back as Empowered Desserts. I'm just gonna take some time to step back and restructure it and figure out how to do it in a way that feels good to me. And so that's my story. Oh, so that's me when I was 16, and then that's my mom next to me. That's an example of, my little booth setup back in the day. And then this is some of the stuff I would do in high school, some of the drawings. So this is the main thing I would do, and then, but just kind of incorporating different types of patterns and line work. That's Wesley right after I had him when I was super young. And then that's kind of just an idea, for me, having a good relationship with food and just experimenting around and stuff like that has always been important. So that's him in the kitchen back in the day, just messing with some aloe and berries and stuff like that. And then that's, the article that came out right after the Green Cat opened. That's my mural at the Green Cat. I have a mural there in the inside, and so that's me working on it. So I've been able to incorporate that stuff, some pieces. That was our first customers at the Green Cat. That was one of my first cakes I made. I mean, I don't have a picture of the cakes I make now, but they've come a long way. They're a lot prettier than that. And then that was me when I started Empowered Plant Cakes. Another place besides Leaping Lizard is West Elm would have little local business people come, so I would go to West Elm with cakes and sit there and sample them out. And then that's an idea of our first menu and our first flavors. And that's, what we moved into Leaping Lizard and some of our first cakes there. And that's what the bakery display case would look like. So that was a lot of fun for me, just being able to set that up. And that gives you a better idea of what our cakes look like. Although now we don't use any of the fruit on top because they don't freeze well. And then that's an example of some of the ingredients we use. We don't use any flours or anything like that. Most of our cakes have around 10 ingredients. They're very rich and indulgent. You wouldn't be able to tell, but they're made with, ingredients like cashews, rolled oats, almond flour, coconut oil, and then we sweeten them with dates, maple syrup, or agave, and we never use any artificial colors at all. The colors that we get from our cakes come from ingredients like berries and spinach and beets and all these things that you don't typically put in cakes. That's our warehouse in the very beginning when I was just getting it set up. Now it looks a lot different, but that's kind of the bread and bones of it. And then this is our first packaging, so our first retail packaging, and that's our current retail packaging too. That's when Katie and I, she's the one who's been with me for 5 years, when we started with our first distributor, that was a really big day and moment for us. We actually had to buy a little pallet stacker and forklift type thing and put it into a truck and wrap a pallet. And then that let us expand outside of, before that we were only in Hampton Roads and Richmond, but then we were able to go throughout the state, which was cool. And then that's just kind of an idea of what our production looks like. We just make the flavors in large batches, so we just just line up all the cake pans and put all the batter in there and kind of get it going. And then this is an idea of like what our new branding is like. It's called Empowered Desserts, and we already have the new packaging for it. It's also FDA certified, so when we do relaunch, we can go back into grocery stores and launch on a larger scale once I figure out my life. So that's it.
Thank you, Paige, for that very human story.
Don't go anywhere.
Don't go anywhere. So, in alignment with the theme for today, what have been some of the patterns that you've observed over the course of your life that led you in one direction, or led you to your healing, or led you to your business, or led you to your personal growth? Have you identified some of the patterns?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a big believer that like life kind of happens in patterns, so you figure them out and it keeps giving them to you in different ways. And so, I mean, my patterns that I needed to work through are really just like communication style and like, learning how to navigate a business and do this type of stuff. But I do think like patterns for me, I was inspired by this topic because patterns are kind of what bring me back to my center. And throughout each part of this phase of my life, I can always kind of refer back to the patterns and doing art, and that kind of keeps me centered. And to be able to make the decision I made with my business, like I really had to get centered and grounded, and really like I was doing a lot of meditating, which might sound cliche, but just like really figuring out like what I need, not what anybody else wants of me, but like what's the best for me. So yeah.
Does anyone else have questions for Paige?
I don't have a question, but Paige and I met, like 8-9 years ago next door at a dinner called Creative Union Dinners. Yes, I met that one of them too. And you brought up cakes.
Yeah.
And was that one of the first cakes?
Well, before I did the cakes for Empowered Plant Cakes, I mean, I would make random cakes at Green Cat and throw them in the grab and go. So that was when I was
And I
at Green
sat
Cat.
next to you and your mom.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I met you. So it's just, I love that you're back here in the space
Yeah.
talking about your journey.
I know, and you were the one that called me about this. I'm like,
I
And like my first talk ever I did a long
That's
time
Highwater Community College.
Sunny
campus.
Sunny called me and asked me to do this. So it's like a small world.
Those are the patterns.
Yeah.
You going to Florida, coming back to Virginia Beach, going to Florida, coming back to Virginia Beach.
Yes.
Yeah, those are the things that help ground us.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sorry. No, I just want to say that I'm so proud of you. I've known Paige for a little bit now, like 2 years, and I helped her when I went through my own, my own transition for a little bit when and we talked about this for a little, and we have kind of similarities on some parts of her life where we have like the alcohol or like to numb ourselves, and I know that this is going to be so, this is just going to go up from here, and
Thank you.
I am so proud of you, and I'm so happy I was able to make it today because it's just, I can't wait to see you shine, and I know this is going to be a great, it's going to be awesome for you. So.
And Maria's made cakes too.
Well, with her, I mean, I'm second on it, so I love you, and I'm happy for you.
We're so grateful for you bringing your authentic self to the fore and helping us, again, seeing how deepening your awareness of yourself empowers you, and how in our lives these experiences that we have help us to center ourselves and bring us to the mindfulness of what we are here to present and here to be for one another.
Yeah.
And so thank you for being here with us.
I know, yeah. I'll just echo Sunny's acknowledgments and thank you, Paige, for your time and sharing your courage, because I think what you said resonated with a lot of people here, even myself included. Sometimes we're so busy in the day-to-day and in the job and focusing, and it's viewed as success, right? And it's viewed as, wow, look how hard they work, they do so many things. But if you're not, truly happy with yourself, to take that courage and take a step back is really great. So thank you for sharing that. Hope you'll come up and meet Paige and ask questions. Thank you to all of our wonderful sponsors and supporters. We could not make this happen without our friends at Cultural Affairs, with Brand Fuel, our friends at Badass, the Garage, obviously, and Five. So thank you all. Have a great day.